Like Victoria, the United Kingdom has a new Conservative government that's not too fond of the human rights laws it's inherited. The UK's former Attorney-General under Tony Blair, Lord Peter Goldsmith, set up his country's Human Rights Act and strongly believes it works. He's in Australia this week and gave his only broadcast interview to 7:30 Victoria. Well, Lord Goldsmith, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
From your experience in the UK, what concrete evidence do you have that a Charter of Human Rights actually makes a difference to individuals' lives?
Well, I've spent time both out of government and in government, and I'm absolutely convinced that the Human Rights Act in the UK has made an enormous impact, both culturally and in terms of the rights which people can actually enforce and enjoy.
Can you give us some examples?
I think there are lots of examples. It's affected things like the way that court martials take place. It's affected things like the right of elderly people not to be separated from their loved ones in old age. It's dealt with the rights of individuals in society in a number of different ways.
Victoria has a Human Rights Charter which is currently under review, and our Attorney-General has described it as dangerous and says it cuts across existing laws. What would you say to him?
We have this debate all the time. When we look at it, sometimes we find that some of the myths which grow up about the way that our Human Rights Act, maybe it's the same for the Victorian Charter, operate, are actually not true at all. I mean, I'll give you an example. At one stage, it was said that one of our most notorious convicted prisoners had won a human rights claim to have hardcore pornography in prison. This was just completely untrue. So I think there are a lot of myths which exist in relation to it. What's important, I believe, in a modern democratic society is that we recognise the rights of all people within our society, and in order to do that you actually have to have some form of enforceable charter or statute which sets out what those rights are and a mechanism for protecting them.
The Attorney-General also runs the argument that it's better to have specific laws to protect specific rights than a wide-ranging charter. Does that do the same job?
I don't think it does. I mean, obviously we have specific laws which deal with particular areas. I think there are two problems with that. One problem is that you don't create a culture of awareness of rights and indeed responsibilities if all you do is have a series of specific pieces of legislation which deal with specific problems. And I think the second issue is that specific laws can't necessarily cover all of the circumstances which arise. You can't necessarily predict them all at the time that you're passing that legislation. And as social conditions change, as problems arise, if you don't have some broader document which protects people's rights, then you may find that they get lost.
Did you face similar difficulties when you implemented your own Human Rights Act?
Absolutely. There was a lot of objection to it. At the time it happened, the Labour government had just come in on a landslide, so politically it didn't have a difficulty. It had announced this long in advance. It was part of our programme. But over the years, it's become very difficult to maintain, including from members of our own party. And we've had lots of different objections to what is taking place. Some of them are based on myths, misunderstandings of how the Act operates. But there is a review taking place at the moment of our Human Rights Act too. So
there's a parallel between what's happening in Victoria and the UK?
I don't know whether it's quite a parallel. I suspect it may be to some extent because we have a new government, and it's the new government which has established this review.
What would be the message that you want to send to this government and indeed to the parliamentary committee that's looking at the review at the moment?
My message would be based on the UK Human Rights Act, that recognising the rights and respecting the rights of all the people within our communities is the hallmark of a civilised, democratic society. Democracy is strong enough to be able to respect and to allow to be enforced the rights of all of the people within our territory, and that's what the Human Rights Act, and I would hope a Victorian Charter, would do as well.
Lord Goldsmith, thanks so much for your time.